you started your journey and now you are in the coaching space.
So I come from a bit of a mentoring slash coaching slash leadership background.
Welcome back, guys, to this new episode. And today I'm very excited because we are going to talk about the most important things that happens in a human life, that is money, having a good mindset, and having a good health at the same time. So we are going to cover how to have the right mindset. What is the difference between the mindset of a common people or a billionaire or a millionaire? Like, what are the difference on their mindset part? We are going to discover about productivity hacks, like how different uh, like the wealthy people eat, and what are the productivity hacks that they use in their nutrition that makes them more energetic. And there are a lot of things that we are going to cover, so make sure watch this video till the end. You're going to get an entire blueprint of your life, like how to structure your life and how to grow massive. So there is only one thing that I want to say: it's the time to change your life. And we are going to cover how Brandon changed his life, what is going on like in his side about his journey, and a lot of things. So Brandon, I'm super excited. Thank you so much for like giving me your time, and let's get started in this podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Brandon. So let's start with your journey. Like you started your journey and now you are in the coaching space. Like, what was that one thing? Like, when you decided, like, it's the time to change my life and I want to do something different from my own. Like, what was that moment? Like, let's start with your journey first.
Oh, goodness. So I come from a bit of a mentoring slash coaching slash leadership background since my early 20s, I would say. I think the leadership aspect of that started for me in my early 20s. I went to college on a full ride for a baseball scholarship. And by about my third year, when I was starting to be one of the more senior guys in the ball club, mentoring and kind of leading some of the incoming freshmen coming into the university was kind of where that started for me. And then shortly after I did my 4 years of college, I went back to my hometown in Pensacola, Florida, and I started working as a carpenter's apprentice. And then shortly after that grew to where I was leading my own crews, and then eventually opened my own residential construction company and was bringing people on, doing the hiring, doing the training, and working with other carpenters in the field, teaching new people how to become carpenters, teaching experienced carpenters how to run their own crews. So that obviously waned a lot of different instructional and leadership skills. And then in about 2007, 2008, we had a bad economic recession here in the U.S. and my phone it wasn't ringing anymore. Nobody was looking to put an addition, in their backyard or anything. They were worried about paying their mortgages. So I couldn't really sustain that way of living anymore. And at the time I had my first daughter, who was 1 at the time. And, I knew I needed to do something. So, all I could think of, after months and months of beating the streets and trying to find a job, to no avail, I joined the United States military. And I always knew for me that would be a stepping stone. Once I got a taste of the entrepreneurial life, I knew that I would find my way back into it. There was something about it, being your own boss. I never really had any issues with authority. I wasn't a problem child or anything like that. It was just something hit different for me about the professional aspect of running your own business. It was the most gratifying thing I had ever been a part of, beating the streets, finding leads, selling jobs, and then going to fulfill those orders. And that was just one of the most addicting and gratifying experiences I had. And I always knew I'd find my way back into it. So fast forward, I did 6 years in the military, where by the time I got out, I had about 15 guys underneath me. I had really gotten heavier than normal into the fitness and nutrition aspect. I had always kind of been involved in that. I had been a multi-sport athlete since I was about 14. So I'd always had some level of fitness. And then as I was getting a little older, not old, but a little older, the nutrition aspect became very important to me as well. And I became certified while I was in the service as a personal trainer and then eventually a nutritionist. And that led me to write some of our big battalion wide, which is, 1,000+ soldiers, um, training program, training and fitness program. And it was adhered to battalion wide. And so that was a fun experience for me, getting to take some of the things that I had learned from a leadership aspect and fitness and nutrition, and implement that at a higher level. But I always knew the military would be a means to an end. And at about my 6th year, I decided to get out and rolled right into, I became an instructor for the Department of Defense, moved back home and instructed on a base for about 5 years, doing similar things that I did in the military, which again gave me more leadership and mentoring aspect. I got to work with service members that were, you know, just coming out of basic training. These guys and girls were 18, 19, 20 years old. They'd never been away from home. And so I got to do a lot of instructing and mentoring with that, and just fell in love with the aspect of being able to affect people in a positive way,
Yeah,
young guys
right.
and even peers. From there, I jumped out of that and stayed in government work for another few years. Ended up working for the Department of Homeland Security in the cybersecurity realm, because that was kind of a hot commodity when I was serving. But in the background, kept taking on clients as a personal trainer, as a nutritionist,
For the coaching.
correct, yeah, 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 and I always had
Yeah.
people reaching out to me and asking me questions about, how can I do this better? How can I do that better? And I would say it was kind of a combination. At about 35 years old, I don't know why,
Mm.
but I kind of had
Yeah.
something under the surface nagging at me. And at about age 35, I'm 42 now. At about 35, I was kind of doing an audit of my life, and I was thinking, well, my life's okay. I do okay financially. I've got good relationships in my life, but if I died today, would I be satisfied? Would I be happy? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
And so that kind of
Mm.
started my journey to um, self discovery, like real self
Mm.
discovery, and from that
This is
spawn,
very important to do, right?
I
This is
think
very important for everybody to do it, like to understand, like, are you happy with the things that you are doing in your life?
correct, yeah, and that was it for me. And when I asked myself those questions, the answer was no. I think I could be doing more. So that started for me with, okay, well, everybody's talking about podcasts. At that point, 7, 8 years ago, I hadn't listened to a single podcast, but they were getting popular. Everybody was talking about them. So I was like, okay, well, I'll dive into a podcast. And so I just kind of jumped on Spotify and searched, like personal development, self improvement, things like that. And I came across, I was lucky, I was spoiled. I came across what I feel is a good one that I still listen to this day. And it's Lewis Howes, who's a performer, professional athlete. He started a podcast, God, probably 12 years ago now, called The School of Greatness. And he's got an array of different people that are, similar to you and me. They started in, just they were lost, and knew they could do more, knew they could be more. And he's got some of the biggest thought leaders and self-made entrepreneur, millionaire success stories on there. And I just became obsessed with it. It took me about a week, and I just became obsessed with it. And then I started diving into personal development books, anything in the self-help space. I just became obsessed with it. I started journaling, and found that to be very, very therapeutic. I started trying to implement, meditation practices, mindfulness, and reflection-based practices, and found that by doing this consistently, not that I had a terrible life, not that I was a miserable person before then, but I noticed that implementing these practices, it made me even more disciplined.
Mm.
I was sleeping better. I was
Yeah.
starting to distance myself from relationships that didn't, that took more than they gave. Not in a selfish way, but in just is this taking my peace, or is this something that, I can pour into, and it's pouring into me, and we're both benefiting. So I started to essentially sever ties with those relationships. I noticed that I felt better during the day. I was more grateful. Uh, and then fast forward to, I guess, probably 2 or 3 years ago, when I started, like, officially started my coaching business. Um, I was at a bit of a crossroad. I was wanting to get out of government work. It was very thankless to me. And I really wanted to get back into a space where I was working one on one with people again, and affecting people in a positive way. And so I asked myself, you know, what does that look like for me? And it was, I sat down and I talked to my wife about it, and she was like, well, you talk about these coaches all the time that you follow, you've bought coaching, packages from people that are in this space. It's all you consume. It's all you read. Why don't you become a coach? Like officially become a coach. So that's what I did. I was still certified as a trainer and a nutritionist. But in addition to that, I kind of dove into the coaching space, and I got certified as a personal development coach. Life coach is what a lot of people know it as. And I also got certified as a financial planner. And the reason that I thought it best, at least for me in my experience, to go the route of all three is because I did another audit in my life when I was at that crossroad, 2-3 years ago. And I asked myself, in my adult life, since I've been out on my own, I moved out when I was 18, and I asked myself, since I've been on my own, anytime I've hit a very tough hurdle, or come across any adversity or level of failure in my adult life, what has been the common denominator? And I noticed that it was always in one of those three categories. It was something mindset or, personal development related that I was struggling with. It was, my health maybe had slipped a little bit. I wasn't putting, quality food in my body, or it was something financial hardship related that was causing me some level of stress. Sometimes a combination of multiple, or even all three. And so it kind of sold itself to me. I'm like, I know that there are other people out there my age, maybe older, definitely younger than me, that are earlier in their journey than I am. And they're struggling in one, two, or even all three of the same thing. So it just made sense to me to get better in those things, and try to instill in others the things that I had been practicing for years now. So that's kind of how I ended
Yes.
up here.
Yeah. What do you feel right now? Do you feel happy? Yeah. Do you feel like this was one thing that you wanted to do your entire life?
Oh yes, yeah. And it's funny, you don't.
It's satisfying?
Oh goodness, it's outside of course, being a husband and a father. In a professional space, though, something that we do, our professional world, we do it. It takes up, 2/3 of our week every week. Um, so it's a big aspect of it. I it's so important to enjoy what you do, and I hear it all the time. You hear people in our space on different sides of the fence. Some people are like, follow your passion, and then you've got others, follow what keeps the lights on and what keeps the bills paid, and then follow your passion later. On one hand, I think it depends on the person and maybe the specific situation, but for me, I know how I felt when I woke up in the morning at 4 something in the morning, knowing what lied ahead when I was working for the government, doing something that didn't fulfill me. It didn't fill me up. I'd come in at the end of a work day and my wife could see it all over my face. She knew, you know, my husband's not happy. And sometimes that negatively leaks into other facets of my life. You can't, we can only be what we can be. And if you've got things that you're not happy with, they're going to come out on your loved ones, your personal relationships. I know what that felt like. And then since being a full-time coach now, I know that feeling when I wake up in the morning and the first thing I feel isn't dread. It's, wow, who do I get to work with today? Who do I get to talk to today and hopefully affect in a positive way? And, sitting down in my office and knowing that I can dictate my schedule for the day however I want. I can exercise whenever it's best for me and my family. I work from home, so I can run errands for my wife if she needs me to. I can break from what I'm doing and go get the kids from school if there's an emergency. But I ultimately I get to sit down in my office and I get to work on content. I get to hone and make my coaching packages better. I get to work on my craft. Sometimes I'll get a little overwhelmed with work, or I'll get a little mentally fatigued, and I'll know it's time for me to step away for 30-40 minutes, go take a walk in nature, go get some fresh air, pick up a book that I'm reading, and just kind of recenter myself. Sometimes it's backing away from the desk, and I take my headphones off, and I just close my eyes and I just do a reflection or a gratitude practice. And those are things I had gotten away from when I was still working for the government. You a lot of times we're doing things that consume us that we don't want to do, and I think at least in my case, you end up compromising sometimes the daily rituals and things that you want to do in exchange for, well, I've got to do this thing. I guess to make a short story long, I don't wake up anymore with the mindset of, well, I have to do this. Now and it should have been all along, but
Yeah.
it wasn't. But now
Yeah.
it's, I wake up and it's, look what I get,
Motivation.
look what I get.
Motivation.
Yeah, yeah, look what I get to do today.
Right, right, right. Like this is very important. When you love what you do, it doesn't feel like working at all. Like it doesn't feel like you are working 24/7 if you love to do what you want to do. Like everybody who is watching this podcast, I want you guys to sit around and just listen to yourself. Are you happy with the things that you are doing? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you satisfied with the things that you are doing? If the answer is no, then you have to think about it, you have to start working. But it is very difficult, Brandon, for the normal people to understand like what they want to do from inside, what are the things that makes them happy, feel them happy. So like for a normal people, what do you think, how we can understand what we want to do in our life, or how to find the life purpose? Like what are the things that I love to do, I feel happy by doing it?
So I think a big aspect of that is disconnecting. We live in this world where there's so much exterior noise. Your phone's blasting off email notifications, social media notifications, and on top of that, if we're not doing that, we're seeking it out. We're doom scrolling, we're watching Netflix all the time. We're doing all these things, and if you're looking at these things as isolated events, they feel harmless, but in this mindset shift I've had, I don't look at things day to day anymore. I look at them on much bigger time vortexes. So I look at, how is what I'm doing right now going to affect me? How is it going to affect my progress, my well being, my state of mind next week, next month, next year, 5 years? Because I truly believe that right now, the result of who we are right now is it's the factors of the decisions we were making a year ago, 5 years ago. And so I'm constantly chasing that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year version of myself. And I believe that our day to day actions are going to determine who we're going to be in the future. So with that being said, shutting out the noise and trying to actually move the needle on things I want to move the needle on. I think that's a big one. Now, as far as your original question, how do you decide what that is for you? I think reflection is a huge part of that. To piggyback off we have too much input. Most people they can't hear their thoughts anymore. They don't hear their authentic voice in their head. All they hear is the stuff that's getting pushed in. Um, I have my wife and I both, we have very, very strict electronic rules in our home. We have 4 kids. They're in all shapes and sizes. We've got one that'll be 18 next week. We've got a 14-year-old, and then we've got 2 twin girls that are 7. We have very, very firm rules on the importance of, listening to your authentic self. And in order to do that, it's between, a lot of times you're not going to be on devices. You're not going to be in front of a screen. That those are what we call non-negotiables. We have a lot of non-negotiables in our life, meaning, a non-negotiable for anybody is brushing your teeth. You're going to have to eat. You're going to have to brush your teeth. You're going to have to go to the bathroom. Those are things you can't get around. We frame things like mental health, exercise, proper nutrition.
Hmm.
We frame those to our children as non-negotiables as well. They're not a choice for us.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
non-negotiable. It's
Yeah.
going to be that way, whether
Non-negotiable.
you like it or not.
Yeah.
Um, and,
100%.
and so with that reflection, you can't possibly know who you are, what you actually want, what fills you up. I don't think, unless you take the time to disconnect and hear what your internal self has to say. And I think a caveat to that as well of how do I determine, what my passion or passions are. When you're not working and you have free time to do whatever you want outside of, staying off devices and stuff, what do you go do with your free time? what is something that you do with your free time? Do you go, do you love walking in nature? Do you love, being on the river? Do you love, how you feel when you're around a certain group of people? Like, what are you doing in your off time? For me, that that was what kind of told me what my purpose was. Even in my off time over the years, I was talking to people, kids I would run into in the gym, people that would reach out to me that I used to serve with, random people in different walks of life that were, reaching out, asking me for advice because it just so happened that at that point in my life, I was in a place or in a position that they were not, that they wanted to achieve. Uh, and so I noticed that those things filled me up. When I had the opportunity to pass down some knowledge and some wisdom that I had learned from, trial by fire, like we always do. I think knowledge is important, but without the experience, knowledge is a bit of a dead end. Those were the things that filled me up. It brought me so much satisfaction to mentor, to coach. So that was it for me. It was a no brainer.
Right. There are so many people that comes to you for with their problems, that they have this problem and that, and you are the helper, you are the healer. You heal their problem, you solve their problem. What is the most common pain point that people have, and they come to you, and like I want you to like give them the solution in this podcast. Like, what is the most common problem that people comes to you?
Whew. You're not making it easy. If I could say what I think the core that it boils down to, and now people that do seek me out, they don't always know this at their core, uh, but I think it boils down to um, healing. I think most people, and of course, I can't speak for the world, but I obviously follow a lot of what goes on in my country for multiple reasons. So I kind of know what's going on, but also because of the line of work that I'm in. And I feel that a lot of people aren't, they're not healed. I'm a huge fan. I think that we've all got past traumas that we haven't dealt with or that we're not dealing with, and they infiltrate and sabotage every facet of our life. And what that ends up looking like for a lot of us is we struggle with emotional intelligence. We're not effective communicators. We we don't know how to lead without ego. There's a lot of different things. My wife and I are huge fans of a of a doctor called Gabor Mate, and he is a world renowned leader and expert in all things childhood development, in anything in the trauma space. And he makes it very clear in his 60 plus years of practice that we've all got trauma. And I think there's a misconception around what trauma actually is and what it isn't. And I think a lot of people are easy to sweep it aside and say, I haven't ever had anything happen to me in my life. I've never been in a car wreck. I've never lost a loved one. I don't have trauma. Well, we all have trauma. Like at this point, it shows from a medical standpoint and from a scientific standpoint. Like in some way, we all have trauma. And
Can you explain more about past traumas? Like, what are past traumas? It can be anything. It can be any small things as well.
it's what it boils down to. And again, from my thousands of hours of consumption of Gabor Mate's work. It's when a child, it starts as when a child doesn't have a need met. And so that can be anything from a prime example is me and my brother grew up in a home where we had a wonderful, very heavily involved, emotionally intelligent mother who created the space for us to become who we were going to become. But she remarried when we were both children, and of course didn't know it at the time, but married a very abusive man, physically and psychologically. And I didn't know this at the time, but from all the studying and the research and I've done with this stuff, it's interesting to see how children take on a specific role in a family dynamic. I took on more of the role as the sensitive. If I see somebody struggling, I try to bring in laughter. I try to bring in warmth, comfort. My brother, he kind of went the other way with it. He was more rigid. He was more reserved. He wasn't big about talking about his feelings and stuff like that. So the point I'm trying to make is I think it's important for you to sit down and be honest with yourself. And that's an extreme case. But at its simplest, it's when a person's not having their needs met. They're not being heard, they're not being seen, they're not being understood. Their feelings, their thoughts, their words are not being taken serious, and they're invalidated. This causes, whether you can help it or not, our minds are there to protect us, and it's going to create some defense mechanisms, for survival. That's what it's designed to do, is to keep us safe, to keep us comfortable. And in the moment of what we're dealing with, I've learned, that's very effective. It helps us in the moment, but the problem is when we get out of that situation, our brains are still doing that thing to try to protect us, and it's not serving us anymore. So what that looks like is emotional immaturity, it's ego, it's lack of the ability to communicate. So I think it's when somebody comes to me and they're struggling with something, I've got relationships that are falling out of my life. I don't know how to talk to my partner. I don't know how to be productive. I don't know how to consistently show up for myself in the gym. To me, it all boils down to the same thing, and there is something under the surface that needs attention, and it's not getting attention. And, and that has been my experience from the stuff I consume, from the thought leaders of the world that are the experts in this, as well as my own experiences, taking what I've learned from that, from people who have done it for 30, 40, 50, 60 years, and used that knowledge to reflect back on my own life. And I have found it to be pretty accurate.
Yeah, I can understand about the traumas, and I think 90% of the audience have it inside it, but they don't know about it, or they are not putting up enough attention, but they have it because it can be small things as well. Like if you are getting bullied in your schools or colleges, if you are not getting what you want, it can be any small things that are having the pain inside. So it is sitting inside deep under you, but you are not able to give enough attention, or you are not believing in it. So what do you think, if somebody can understand that they have some traumas or something inside, what should they do? Like, what is the first step?
I think awareness is always the first step with everything. Um, I think awareness is where it lies. I know we've all had this experience where you see something in a situation so clearly, and you're trying to explain it to the other person who may be causing some of the friction, and it's just they're just not seeing it. They can't hear it. It's you're on a completely different wavelength from them, and I think we all have to become more self-aware. What are your habits? What are your traits that negatively affect other people? It all boils down to awareness. And in order to do that, it goes back to the things we've already talked about. You've got to disconnect. You have to put in the time to reflect. You have to, as uncomfortable as it is, get in a quiet space by yourself and just exist without any distractions. Don't have anything in your hand. Don't be looking at a screen. Don't be looking off wondering what you need to be doing in the next half hour, or how somebody cut you off in traffic 2 days ago and you're still a little pissed off. In this world we live in, most people can't even get quiet with their own thoughts for 60 to 90 seconds because it makes them uncomfortable.
Right,
It's very
right,
uncomfortable.
right.
And I think
It's very
awareness is where it has to start. If we don't know ourselves, well,
hmm.
I mean, how good can you be to yourself, or anybody else if you don't really know yourself?
Right, right. We can start with also like doing breath work meditation in a daily basis. This can be a great start to just understand yourself, understand your thoughts, what are coming up in your mind. Amazing. Brandon, like there is one thing that is coming up in my mind. Like when we are a youngster, like I'm very young than you. Like I'm just 22 right now. So at this point of time, like there are two options for me. Like should I, like I'm working very hard. I'm waking up in the nights. Like as I'm in India, you are in the United States. So like I'm waking the entire night. I'm working very hard. But at this point of time, I'm not able to take care of my health. But I know, like I've heard from a lot of people, that at one point of time you will have a lot of money, you will have a lot of success, but you would not have your health at that point of time. So right now, honestly, I'm not focusing on my health at all. So like, how to balance both the thing at the same time, and what are the daily routines that we have to follow that can balance both the things? Like we can work hard at the same time, and we can also take care of our health.
Whew, that's a great question. And I feel I can speak to it a little bit because I've also been guilty of it, which is why I picked the three focus areas that I did as a coach. Now, having some of the wisdom I have, having done this trial by fire for the last 20 plus years, what I have found is some of the common things that are ignored, that will change everything in a negative way if they go unchecked for too long. The first one being sleep. Sleep is a huge one. You can't outrun it. Is that the way? That's not a subjective opinion. Like that's just what the studies show. Now, of course, you've got people out there, and I used to be convinced that I was one of them as well. Well, yeah, I would love to get 8 hours of sleep, but I do just fine on 4 or 5. And it may seem like that, and you may be able to have some good throughput and productivity, but eventually it catches up to you. And the studies show that it's not sustainable. But if you force yourself to do that for a long period of time, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it will start to affect your health mentally and physically. Like it'll show up in those ways. I think probably the best saying I've ever heard about this is, if you don't make time for your health, you'll be forced to make time for your illnesses. And I
Mm,
live that every day.
exactly.
It was so powerful when I first heard that, because we think
Wow.
we're invincible. Well, yes, that's terrible what happened to that person, but that's not going to happen to me. So sleep being a big one.
How many hours of sleep?
I'm a non-negotiable, 7.5 to 8.5, non-negotiable for me. If I
Eight hours.
I perform better that way, and I believe, I'm not a sleep study expert, but I do listen to plenty of podcasts and read plenty of literature on people who are, like, that's their passion, that's what they've dedicated their mastery to. I certainly believe those guys, and while sure, new scientific literature comes out every year about things like this, the commonality across the board is 7 to 9 hours of sleep is really the sweet spot for a human. Another one that most people, when I take on a new client, do not think of, and that is stress management. We ignore stress
Okay.
management. There is a reason that there is a saying that we all think that we understand, but don't really slow down or bat an eye at it when we hear it, and that's stress kills. Stress
Mm,
kills is one of the most literal terms out there that we don't slow down to think about the severity of it. God, stress it ages you. Your telomeres get shorter. Your internal life. You close the gap on longevity when you live in a constant state of stress, of anxiety, of you've got that sympathetic nervous system just constantly firing off, and you're fight or flight all the time. And that served us when we were living off the land, and we didn't know, if a bear or a saber tooth was going to come walking up on us in the morning. That served us back then, and that's when. But we're so much more stressed than we've ever been, and it's the most unusual thing. And I understand why, from media agendas to governments and stuff like that, and we're plugged into it, right? I mean, we've got these things that just tell us everything, and we don't put them down. We don't know how to. We're addicted to it, whether we want to realize it or not.
right.
But stress management is huge, and like you said, which is one thing I love to practice, which is things like meditation and breath work.
Yeah.
so underestimated the power of a 60-second breath work practice. I'm a what do they call? I'm a fan of the is it the box breathing? You know that you've got the four. You're four in, you hold for four. You're
Yeah,
you're
then you
four
have to
out,
hold it.
and then you're four. Yeah, that is the one that I have found is most effective for me. You know, if I find myself getting angry or anxious or
Yeah, yeah,
uncentered, if I can just get quiet for 60 seconds to a couple of minutes and just do my box work. I'm not saying it's the cure all, and I think that's the thing with a lot of people, but it helps refocus, and then from there it's a breadcrumb effect for me. It's the box work, and then it's is this thing that's riling me up, is it really that serious, or is it my perception of it? What am I grateful for? What are the good, instead of this is happening to me, why can't I reframe it? What is this trying to teach me? So the reframing aspect of that me it has always helped. But getting back to the original question, it's funny when I used to get fitness clients, back when that was my only practice as a coach. They all come in and they're all super motivated at first, and they're very hyped to make positive changes. And when I'm sitting doing my first initial consultation with them, they think that first initial consultation, they think the first questions I'm going to ask them is, what does your exercise routine look like right now? What foods are you eating? You know,
hmm,
how many calories are you burning in a day? Do you know? Things like that. And those are not my first questions. My first three questions are always, and this goes back to your original question, what can I do right now?
yeah,
I ask them,
yeah.
what's your sleep schedule like? What's your
Okay.
stress management like? And what does your hydration look like? These are such, we sweep these things under the rug all the time as if, yeah, they matter, but
Yeah,
not so much. If I don't,
yeah,
if I'm not, if I don't have a healthy sleep hygiene, if I'm not properly managing my
yeah.
stress, if I'm not properly hydrated, which helps with a myriad of things from fatigue to proper hydration, digestion,
Right.
so many different things. If I don't have those things on point, it's at some point I'm going to be sitting in front of my desk, and I'm going to be trying to play with my kids, and I'm just not going to be there. My central nervous system is
Mm,
not is my central nervous system is not going to be on point. I'm not going to be able to focus.
yeah.
I'm going to feel tired and sluggish. And I hear so many people back when I used to work in an office setting, when I worked for government, and they all would say the same thing. They'd back away from their desks, they do that big stretch, they'd yawn, and then they'd grab their coffee cup and they'd run for the coffee pot. And look, I love coffee. I'm not knocking coffee. But most people think, wow, I'm really dragging right now. I don't have enough caffeine in me.
Yeah,
When in
yeah.
actuality, it's you slept for 4 hours last night, and it was probably broken. It was probably broken sleep
Right.
because you went to bed looking at a screen. So everything was firing off, and so you didn't you
Yeah.
didn't you didn't let your circadian rhythm start properly. Your sleep cycle start properly. You didn't get enough sleep. The only water you've had today has been
Yeah.
from what you got from coffee, and you're not moving your body and putting nutrient dense food in your body. You're not under caffeinated. You're lacking, and you're deficient in the other things. So if I could say, what could you do today? It would be work on your sleep hygiene, work on your stress management, and hydrate better. If you
Right.
start with those three things alone, you will notice a difference within a week.
Very important.
And then from there,
100%. 100.
and then
Yeah,
from, and
yeah,
then from
yeah.
there, of course, build on those. Put mostly nutrient dense whole foods in your body. Move your body
Right.
at least, move your body and get your heart rate up at least 2, 3, 4 times a week. If you can get 10,000 steps in a day, like all of that stuff matters. And you may notice, of all these things that you're talking about, things I can do today, none of them have to do with any level of productivity for work or life or anything like that.
100%. 100%. And hydration is also very, very important. Like, this is also very underrated. Like, a lot of people are like not hydrated enough, but like this is very important to do. Like, from now, like I'm going to keep a 1 gallon of water over there and just have the drinks again in the entire day. So
Yes.
is there any specific like you would recommend, like you should have minimum like non-negotiable this much liter of water in a day?
It's going to depend a lot of times on output, your activity level. But I think a good place to start for somebody who's wanting to do better is at a minimum of 2 liters. 2 liters. I'm not sure how
Right.
many ounces that is.
Sure.
On days that I don't move my body, like if I'm going to have like a rest day where I'm going to let my body heal and recover, I'll still get up and walk and
Right.
go for a walk outside and stuff. But I'm not going to physically exert myself. A minimum for me is my non-negotiable is 3 liters, which is 101 ounces. On days I
Amazing.
move, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying that this is a blanket statement for everybody, but on days I move,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm well over a gallon on days I move.
Amazing.
But it just
Amazing. But
it's very subjective. But I think a minimum of 2 liters, um,
depends on person to person.
and you would be surprised at how many people don't even come anywhere near that.
Uh, right, right.
Yeah.
Brandon, like I'm very curious to know about the caffeination thing that you told us right now. Like a lot of people are like I'm training the caffeine, like they are having the coffee again and again. This happens to me, and I'll meet a lot of people in my network who are working 24/7. They are dependent on caffeine or any type of drug because they are having brain fog. They are not able to focus,
Mhm.
and caffeine is just one type of addiction. Like they are having caffeine and only then they are able to focus on the work. Like is there any productivity hack you would recommend that can help us to release the brain fog that we have and be more productive at the time that we work? As you have read a lot of books and you're a coach yourself,
Mhm.
so it would be amazing if you can give us some hacks that can help us to be focused in our work. What should we do?
Absolutely. I experience the same thing. Even if I only work for 4 to 6 hours a day, like we all experience it. So I'll just tell you the things that I do when I find myself getting there. And you know your threshold. You know when you get there. You know when like God, my back's hurting, and then you realize you haven't gotten up out of your chair for 4 hours. Things like that. You're yawning. You're struggling. Your eyes are burning. Excuse me. The things that I do are I cannot remember what this tactic is called, but it's a very deliberate, almost aggressive breath work where you take a very aggressive deep inhale, and then it's a slight hold with an aggressive exhale. I do 20 of them in a row, and the studies have shown that really jolts the central nervous system. Pulling hard air into your lungs like that and releasing really does a jolt to the central nervous system. I get up out of my chair and then I do that. Then I will do some light stretching for 2 or 3 minutes. Bend over and touch my toes. To the side. Sometimes I like to lay on my back and then have my knees bent at a 45 and just kind of rock my legs and my knees back and forth to stretch my lower lumbar. Um, a little reflection, and then I like to go outside and go for a walk. If I can't get outside and go for a walk, well then I'll walk around the house. I'll make sure that I get back. If I've got a lot that I need to do and I need to get back to my desk, I'll do it with some efficiency so I can get back to my desk. But the one thing that I don't compromise anymore and trade off is knowing that I need to do those things. Like I said, non-negotiables, right? Because I know from experience, from my own experience, that what happens is if I tell myself, well, I don't have time to do those things. I got to get this done. What happens is our level of throughput and productivity, it suffers, right? Because we haven't backed off from a little bit. We haven't taken some space to get up and move around a little bit and wake ourselves back up and take in some more oxygen, get a little bit of water, maybe go get a nutrient dense snack, something with some protein and some healthy fat. If you trade off those things because, well, I've got a lot to do and I'm going to stay at my desk and do it, it's like the concept of the 4 hour work week, right? Like, how productive are you really staying if you're sluggish and you're tired and fatigue is starting to set in? So for me, I sacrifice that 12 to 15 minutes of productivity to get up and move
Yeah.
around, do some stretching, do a little breath work, hydrate, get a nutrient dense snack. And then when I come back 15 minutes later, it's almost like sometimes like I'm sitting down for the first time in the day. I'm as fresh as I need to be to do the rest of the things that I need to do.
Right. Like this breath work, like this is amazing. Like I have tried this myself. Like there is a famous guru in India. Like if you have heard about Sadhguru, so like you have heard about it, no? Yeah. So he's very famous in India, and like there are a couple of meditation that I do of him. So there are a lot of them, like to have a deep breathing and hold it and just do it faster again and again for 20, 30 times, and this is going to like release like this is going to calm your mind down and you can focus on one thing. So this is amazing, Brandon. Like this podcast was amazing. I learned a lot of things from you. You are an all-rounder, and I have learned a lot of things from you. If anybody who's watching this podcast wants to connect with you, want to listen more about you, see more of your videos, want to connect for your coaching programs, like what are the best way to do it? How we
Uh,
can connect with you?
I'm pretty simple. I don't spend a lot of time on social media for reasons that we've talked about. I don't have any other social media platform. I did recently start a YouTube channel a few months ago, and it's just my name, just at Brandon Printer. It is everything, everything along the lines of what we talked about. It's mindset, it's personal development, it's productivity hacks, it's health, it's nutrition, it's finances. I've been pretty heavy on finances for a few weeks now because I've noticed that that tends to garner a lot of attention, and people have a lot of questions about that for obvious reasons. We're always wanting to time jump ourselves financially. So, but yeah, that's it. That's the only place you can find me. We stay pretty quiet, pretty private otherwise.
Amazing, amazing. So, guys, I'm going to put all the links in the description. You can check it out. Like, you are going to find all the links in the description. Brandon, like, thank you so much for this podcast. This was very amazing. Guys, if you want to have a part two where we can have a deeper conversation about finance, because in this podcast, like, we're not able to touch the financial part. So, if you want to have a deeper conversation about that, like, let us know in the comment section. Brandon, thank you so much once again.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a blast.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. See you in the next podcast.